This is the autograph of the guy that was holding his finger up. He's the National Guardsman. In the lower right-hand corner, this is the autograph of the Postmaster General.
It's so good to see so many familiar faces, and I'm honored to introduce our speaker tonight. I know all of us are grateful for his time and willingness to be here. Um, a lifelong stamp collector and author of American Astro Philately, the first 50 years, David Ball is one of this country's foremost experts on items pertaining to space travel. David was raised in Natick, Massachusetts, near Boston, began collecting stamps at age 8. A tumble on his bicycle landed him in the hospital for a couple of days, and to keep him occupied, his mom bought him a stamp album. What a brilliant idea that was. And he's been hooked on philately ever since. In 1991, he was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Air Force and served as flight nurse for 26 years. David led medical teams transporting wounded soldiers from war zones in Iraq and Afghanistan to hospitals in Germany and the U.S. All the while, he continued to avidly collect stamps. In 2006, Mr. Ball traveled to the World Philatelic Exhibition in Washington, D.C., an international stamp show held in the U.S. once every 10 years. And as many of us here know, that exciting expo will be held again this coming May in Boston for 8 days. David's visit to his first expo drew him into astrophilately, and among other things, he enjoys collecting U.S. manned and unmanned space covers with a special interest in experimental flight. He's an active member of the Waltham Stamp Club, which meets at the wonderful Spellman Museum of Stamps outside of Boston. And David is a true champion for our hobby. Tonight's presentation is entitled Ukrainian War Issues, What They Tell Us, and his captivating talk is a fascinating study in propaganda and morale as told through philately. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel David S. Ball. Thank you again, David.
Where did you come up with that stuff?
A bird told me.
I guess. I learned more about me in the last 2 minutes than. Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you for the invitation. And I'm delighted we can start now because my mother's here. So that's great. Thanks, Mom. Thank you to Rick and to the Houston Stamp Club because I'm not a I don't collect foreign stamps. I'm a U.S. collector. I'm principally a postal historian, but lately I've been exposed to Ukrainian stamps, and I'm floored by it. I'm floored. I'm delighted by it, and I wanted to share with you just some of the recent issues since their war in 2022 with the Russians, and it kind of gave me a different flavor of what stamps are and what they can be. And so let me try sharing my screen. You're going to let me know whether or not this comes up as full screen.
Looks good.
It's there.
Okay. All right. When we think about what postage stamps are, I mean, their intent is to create a contract between a person who wants to send a letter and a service that's able to provide that. So we pay somebody, 78 cents or something like that. We lick the adhesive, we put it on the envelope, and it magically shows up in some other place. But stamps can be a lot more than just that. They can be propaganda. They can be showing that you're proud of your country. They can teach you things about culture, and some of the things that I've seen with Ukraine are just remarkable. And let me share that with you. The first thing that came to mind when I saw some of these modern Ukrainian stamps was the word defiant, and it's like, well, how do you come up with a stamp and you come up with that image in your head? Well, they were attacked by the Russians, and the Russians they sent a ship, the Moskva, kind of the pride of the fleet, and they were off the coast of Snake Island. And on Snake Island, they had, I mean, Snake Island only has maybe 50 people on it. And they had a National Guard group of maybe a dozen soldiers who are guarding Snake Island. And the Moskva shows up and it sends a message to the radio station on Snake Island. And it says, we're here. We want you to surrender. And, and these National Guardsmen are kind of looking at each other. And, uh, and the Russians say, surrender or we'll attack you. And and so one of these National Guardsmen, he shows the international sign of defiance, right? He puts up his hand and he extends his middle finger, and he says "F you." And it was such a David and Goliath sort of thing. You have this modern enormous battleship, and you have this National Guardsman who's kind of flicking him the bird. Well, it turns out that the Russians attack. And the report was that the National Guardsmen were killed. And they were posthumously awarded medals, and they were kind of put up as exemplars of the kind of person that would defend the homeland, defend Ukraine. Well, it turns out that they didn't die; they were taken captive, and some of them were repatriated, including the guy that flipped the bird. So, so he ends up being kind of a minor celebrity, gets to meet the president, Vladimir Zelensky, and the post office decides that they want to issue a stamp. And so they put out a call for artists to come up with a design for a stamp. Now, this is not the way we do it in the United States. In the United States, there's something called the Citizen Stamp Advisory Committee. And this group takes suggestions from people in the country, and they come up with what issues we're going to produce in the coming year. Well, you can only produce in the United States about 100 designs a year. All right. So you might have like the 50 state birds or something like that. Well, that's half of all your stamps, and you have to have a couple of Christmas stamps. You have to have a Kwanzaa stamp. You have to have a Hanukkah stamp. So, you run out of available stamps that you can put out. And the number of people, the number of designs that are suggested each year is about 30,000. Okay. So the likelihood that anybody that makes a suggestion to the stamp advisory board and will get their stamp put on, produced is essentially none. So what the Ukrainians did, instead of having, regular artists submit works and things like that, is they kind of put out on the internet and they said, would somebody like to design a stamp? Well, they got a number of entries, and then those entries they did kind of an internet poll, and they asked people, which design do you like? I mean, they picked a couple of designs and they put it up for a vote. Well, the person that got 8,000 votes was this stamp. Okay, it's a picture of the National Guardsman, and you can see the Moskva. And what's kind of neat about this, and it's kind of subtle, is that the colors of the Ukrainian flag are blue and yellow. So here you on the top part you have kind of the blue sea, and on the yellow you have kind of the yellow land, and so that's kind of subliminally this is Ukraine, and it's an act of defiance. So
David,
yes.
I hate to interrupt, but we're not getting the full screen. We're getting the image, but we're also getting all of the icons along the side. If that's what
Oh,
you,
I'm sorry. Let
if
me
that,
see if I can fix that. Um, I think part of the issue is that
Yeah. No.
there,
Yes. There
much
you go.
better.
That's
Okay.
better.
Okay.
Oh,
All right. Okay. So are you full
Now we
screen
see
now?
your notes, David. We see your notes on the side right now.
Okay. Yeah. The problem is I'm just going to look this way, and we'll be able to do that. Let me see. I apologize.
No problem.
no problem.
That works.
Um, but it's not full screen though.
No.
All right. Let me
It's
try this again. Give me one moment.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay. All right. So
Yeah.
I'm going to look over at this screen, but you'll get the full screen. Okay. So anyhow, thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure.
So we have two stamps here. We have an F and a W. Now, in the United States, the majority of our stamps are denominated, right? So you've got a stamp that says 78 cents, and that's how much you pay for the stamp. Non-denominated stamps are ones where they use letters instead of an amount of money. So the F stamp is the first class domestic rate for internal mail inside Ukraine. The W is the international rate, which is equivalent to about $1.70 or so to send a letter, overseas. So anyhow, this is the Ukrainian, doing his thing, and so I was really taken that that they decided to put out a stamp like this. I mean, it's very edgy. It says, we're here, we're going to stand up to you. And the amazing thing that happened after they put out this stamp. Oh, by the way, so here's a first day cover, right? It has a pictorial cancel and it has a nice cachet. And so in the upper left-hand corner, this is the autograph of the guy that was holding his finger up. He's the National Guardsman. In the lower right-hand corner, this is the autograph of the Postmaster General. So he was there and he signed a couple of these envelopes, and so these are collectible. And over here on the left, you can see this is Vladimir Zelensky, who's kind of hawking these stamps. He can see the propaganda value to it, and he's proud of this. So there's the president of the country, showing these stamps. Now I want to take the word successful. Okay, we saw defiant. So how about successful? Well, what ends up happening is after they produced the stamp, the Ukrainians sunk the ship. So here's a country that when they got attacked, the first thing that the United States did was we contacted the president of Ukraine and we said, we can send a plane for you so that you can go into exile. And what Zelensky said was, he said, don't send me a ride, send me ammunition. He said he was going to stay and he was going to fight. And so after they put out the stamp, the Ukrainians sunk the Moskva and the Russians were shocked. So what did the Ukrainians do? Well, they put out another stamp. This time they put out the same stamp, but the ship isn't there anymore. So this is called the done issue because it's a block of 6. 3 of them are labels that say done on. And 3 of them are these stamps. So this is the interior, this is the internal domestic rate. This is the F stamp. But there's no ship anymore. So I just thought, how clever is that? I've never heard of anybody doing something like that. So here are the done stamps, which you can still get in the post office in Ukraine. The original stamps are very expensive now. But these done ones, they made up 5 million of them, which is a lot of stamps for them. And you can see the ones that say done do not have letters on them. So you can't use them for postage. You can just use them as labels. But the others are valid for postage. And there were some other values. There's a whole set of letters for ones that are that either pay a registration fee or excess weight, a number of different things. And here you can see the pictorial cancel. Here they have the Moskva going to the bottom of the sea. And their pictorials are just delightful. I mean, they do an outstanding job, not just in canceling the stamps, but in saying a lot just with the postmark. So they've got the Russian warship one, then they've got the one that's done, and then I'll show you some others. Patron, the dog. How about this word, routine? So what was happening is you'd have a lot of Russian armor that was attacking Ukraine, and the Ukrainians would fight back, and sometimes they would disable this Russian armor. So here you can see on the left a tank, and you can see the main gun has kind of been disabled, and there's a Z on the side of the tank, and the Z is kind of like a victory symbol that the Russians are using as part of their attack. So, as a matter of fact, the Ukrainians, one of their denominations for one of the letters that they had on their postage were Z's, and they no longer use them because of the war. But here is a picture of a tank that's being towed by a farm tractor, and this would happen. The Ukrainians would just kind of take a chain and hook it up to something and drag it off. Now, I don't know whether or not they were taking it off for scrap metal or whether or not they could like refurbish it and use it against the Russians or whatever. But this became a fairly common thing. And just imagine what it does to the spirit of the Ukrainians to have a stamp that comes out that shows them just kind of dragging off um, the foreign weaponry. And the name of the stamp is something like "Good morning, we're from Ukraine" or something like that. And so these come out as M, which are internal use, and W, which are international rates. And I like on these mini sheets how it's got the uh, you've got the mirror image here. First of all, you've got the yellow and the blue again, right? But kind of the mirror in the water, and then the fact that they've got kind of Ted Besh, they've got the images upside down. So that's kind of cool. And again, the post office there, they do a marvelous job of coming up with envelopes that have great cachets on them. And they not only do first day covers, like this is a first day cover, but if you want this in a tote bag, if you want it as a mug, if you want it as a t-shirt, that stuff is all there at the post office. So you can just order it online. It's delightful. Now, in this particular case, you can see this is an M value, and this is a domestic overweight letter. And in this case, it's registered. And what's happened is because it's already been canceled as a first day cover, it couldn't be sent without putting more postage on it. So you see they put this definitive on here and canceled it, and that's how they were able to send it through the mail. So I'm trying to kind of understand their rates, and I'm still trying to figure it out. Some of this stuff is kind of tough. They did discontinue the V and the Z rates because of military symbolism. They're wary of that. So, like I said, it's kind of confusing, and the rates have changed substantially. One of the reasons that they went to non-denominated is because they've had some hyperinflation, and because the price of moving letters has changed over a short period of time. They said, well, okay, a W is just going to mean an international letter, and whatever it costs on that day to buy it. These are like forever stamps. In the United States now, you buy something that is a contract to move first class under an ounce envelope. Same thing with the Ukrainians. And they've gone through a lot in the last couple of years in terms of different kinds of tariffs and the fact that they're in a war zone. It's been a challenge for them. But what's interesting, and I highlight this at the bottom, is the revenue from the post office went up 18% in 2023, and and then parcel and small package revenue up 34%, international exchange services up 61%. They're actually making money in the post office, which is something that, you know, is something that we're not all that familiar with. And then I tried like learning these formulas, but don't go crazy on that. How about this stamp? Promise. So they put out this stamp about the Kursk Bridge. Now this is an interesting stamp. So the Kursk Bridge is a pet project of Vladimir Putin, who spent, I think, $6 billion to create a bridge between Russia and Crimea, which they annexed in 2014. And they use it not only to kind of establish and say, well, Crimea is now ours, but they also use it to the military uses it to get troops and stuff into Crimea. So what the Ukrainians did was they blew up the bridge. They dropped a couple of spans, and they've repeatedly gone after this bridge for a number of reasons. Part of it is military, part of it is psychological. And so what I want to share with you is this stamp over on the right. So if you're looking at this and you're kind of thinking, well, this is kind of like the Titanic, right? I mean, there's Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, and they're on the prow of the bow of the Titanic, and she's got her eyes closed and her arms out, and he's behind her. You know, it's this love story about everybody who drowns and freezes to death, right? Well, what they're doing here is they're on the Kursk Bridge, and there's an awful lot of symbolism that's going on here, a lot of things to kind of unpack. So this is called a Maxim card for people that don't know. So it's a card where the postcard looks the same as the stamp. And so it has a couple of different elements to it, primarily that the postmark tie together, that it not just be a regular postmark, but one that ties together the stamp and the larger image. So this is called a Maxim card. And like I said, they have wonderful cachets. But what I wanted to show you is some of the psychological aspects of this stamp. So first of all, the stamp was revealed on the same day that they attacked the bridge. And I cannot imagine that. I'm a former military guy, and the idea that we would like call up the post office and say, hey, you know, if you want to get a stamp together, because we're going to go ahead and bomb this bridge, you know, I mean, how do they do that? How does the post office have a stamp that comes out that's revealed on the same day as the attack? But somehow they did. And this is the day after Putin's birthday. And the design, it parallels the attack on the bridge and the idea of an unsinkable Titanic. Because when the Titanic was put to sea, they said, well, this ship, you know, don't have no worries about this ship, okay, because there is no way it will ever sink. And then on its first maiden voyage, it sunk, right? And one of the things that Ukraine has to fight is the idea that because the big Russian bear is there, that they're inevitably going to lose. And what the Ukrainian post office is telling you is, you know, they said the Titanic could never be sunk. And people assumed that we were going to go under. And then it's not true. There is nothing that is written. There is nothing that's ordained that it needs to be that way. So the Postmaster General says, Titanic efforts of our people and our armed forces. And how delightful is that? And I want to show you some little tidbits. So it's difficult to see, but over here in Kate's hand, she's holding a cigarette. So it says Winslet's character is depicted holding a cigarette in reference to the fact that Ukrainian officers have jokingly blamed explosions throughout Crimea on Russian soldiers being careless with their cigarette butts. So, for example, when the Moskva was hit, what the Russians said is, oh, there was an accident in the magazine and we had a fire on board. They didn't say the Ukrainians sunk the Moskva. They blamed it on an accident. And so one of the jokes that the Ukrainians have is, oh, well, I guess the Russians are being careless with their cigarettes. Something else just blew up. Now, down here in the bottom, here you can see a car that's fallen off the Kursk bridge, and it's got a Z on it, which means that it's Russian, right? And falling out of it are washing machines. And it's like, well, what is that about? Well, it turns out washing machines falling out of the passenger cars, it plummets into the water. And this is a nod to reports of Russian soldiers stealing washing machines as they're looting Ukrainian homes. So, you know, these Russians are obviously not professional soldiers. I mean, professional soldiers don't do that. You know, they're pillaging, right? And this is just kind of it's a way for the Ukrainians to communicate this. Say, look at this. You know, this is the kind of people that we're dealing with. And then up at the top, you can see there's a drone that's flying, and that's kind of become a symbol of Ukrainian resistance. And some of their greatest successes have been related to their unmanned vehicles. One of the big casualties in a war is that it's not just soldiers that are involved. And particularly in this one, you have families, you have women and children. And imagine what this is doing to children. And wouldn't it be great if there was something for children in the Ukrainian post office? I want you to meet Patron. So Patron is the pet of one of the commanders in the Ukrainian military. And so he decided when the war started that he was going to have his dog trained to be a bomb sniffing dog. So he looks for ordnance and landmines. And he is such a lovable dog that he's had his own YouTube channel. He's had comic books, and he goes to like grocery store openings and things like that. I mean, he's a rock star, you know, and particularly for children, you know, who it really resonates with them. So you see some of these some of the different stamps in the mini sheet. He's as much kind of a folk dog, you know, and an idealized kind of thing as he is like a pet or a member of the military. But Patron means bullet. So that's kind of his name. He's this short, squat, little wiry, friendly dog. And so you can see in the cache, you know, here they've downed a Russian helicopter, and here's a Russian bomb, and here you can see what Patron thinks of the Russians. How about this one? And I find it amazing that the Ukrainians can see something that happens and just capitalize on it. So it turns out that the British artist known as Banksy went to Ukraine, and there he is in this bombed out village, and he decides to spray paint art on the wall. And the Ukrainians see this, and so what do? They make a stamp. So it turns out that what we have here is a small child, and he's just thrown this adult, this black belt adult. So who is it who studied martial arts in Russia? Vladimir Putin. Okay, so this is the David and Goliath. You know, this is the Ukrainian flipping Vladimir Putin. And so they created this stamp. Now, when you see a plus sign, so this is F, which is a domestic rate, but when it's plus, it means it's a semi-postal, which means that there's a charity component. So that additional 7 will go to a hospital or, you know, some sort of social service. And so that's been a very, very popular stamp. And they're so smart, you know? I mean, these stamps, they all They have some levity to them. They have some gravitas. They have some immediacy, some recent history. They're a delight. Progress. They did something recently that I just thought was just unbelievable. I've never seen anything like this in warfare. So what the Ukrainians did was they drove a couple of 18-wheeler trucks and they parked them outside. They drove them into Russia and they parked them outside of air bases. And then the tops of these trucks opened up and hundreds of drones flew out and attacked the airfield. And it was called Operation Spiderweb. And they destroyed a number of strategic bombers that the Russians are just not going to be able to replace. And they did them with these cheap little drones. No one's ever done an attack like this. So what do? They celebrate it in a stamp. All right. So that their people can see this is a U rate. This is a domestic rate. They can see this is your country fighting back. I mean, you can see when bombs come over and you can see that you're short on electricity and you can see all the misery, but I want you to know that we're also making progress. So this is what the mini sheet looks like, and well, one of the jet bombers that they took out. So they have a number of different weapons, some pretty advanced stuff. I mean, we kind of imagined that since they were kind of Eastern European, that they would be kind of backwards and they would just have cheap Russian stuff, but they're very innovative. And they've got a number of different weapons platforms that are just doing remarkable work. And one of them that I want to show you is this one, Sea Baby. It's a naval drone that attacks underwater. So I thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if their next stamp was about Sea Baby? So Sea Baby just had an attack where they destroyed a Russian submarine with one of these. So here's one that a cover that I kind of made up. And this is a picture from CCTV coverage, and you can see in the upper left-hand corner, that's the submarine blowing up. I mean, they took a remarkable piece of Russian technology, and they were able to get in there and blow up this submarine. What I'm working on right now, I'm the president of the American Airmail Society, and we tell people that there are 47 ways to collect airmail. But I'm going to make number 48, and that's drone mail. So I have a friend. We both work for an auction company. We're describers. We write the catalog when you bid on stamps at auction. And he just came back last week from Kyiv. He went to Ukraine, and because we're both stamp collectors, we've made up these envelopes, and we're going to get the troops to fly these in combat. These will be probably reconnaissance flights as opposed to like the flights where they drop bombs. But I just think it'll be really cool. So so we've got up here an international rate stamp, and then this is a Cinderella, right? It's something that looks like a stamp but does not pay a rate. So we kind of made up these drone stamps, and I mean this picture down here is remarkable. These were images that came from the British Telegraph, and what happened was a drone dropped a message to this Russian soldier who was hiding in a crater, a bomb crater, and he was cut off from his men, and it was a note that said surrender. And so he says, I give up, I surrender. And the drone was able to lead him to the Ukrainians where they took him captive. So this guy surrendered to a drone. Okay. And, if I were in that situation, I would have done that too. Anyhow, they're doing remarkable things. They've put out hundreds of stamps, and they're a brave country. They're a democratic country. Um, they have my full support. And at the big stamp show in May, um, my friend and I, who went to Ukraine, and we're doing this, we're going to show off some of this drone mail, and we're going to be sharing the stage with uh, the United States Ukrainian Collecting Society. And we just learned that the Ukrainian Post Office is going to be at the Boston Stamp Show. So we're going to invite them to come too. So anyhow, these are our Ukrainian modern war issues.
Air Force.
Wow. That is fascinating, David.
Nice.
Are there questions for David?
I have a compliment for David, but I bet that doesn't count as a question.
No, that's okay. I always take compliments.
I honestly thought it was really, really cool. It also taught me quite a bit about like the war. Like all I hear about is stepmom and dad talk. My stepmom and dad talking about it. And nothing really else.
I thought
Well,
the Titanic stamp was really very cool with all of the symbolism.
yeah, it's remarkable. You know, in the United States, stamps used to always be engraved, and we had very high-minded subjects. You know, it might be a picture of George Washington or of the Lincoln Memorial or something like that. And nowadays, we've kind of sold the ad space to Coca-Cola or to Disney or, you know, so now they're SpongeBob SquarePants stamps, you know, they're Star Wars and things like that. And I can appreciate that modern entertainment has a place with culture in the United States and with philately. But I miss some of the gravitas and some of the subtlety that older stamps had. And so I don't know. I think the Ukrainian stuff has been refreshing.
David, has this interest in the modern Ukrainian material gotten you interested in earlier
No,
Ukrainian material?
no.
No.
So
Okay.
Ukraine put out stamps starting in 1918.
Mhm.
And they're definitives, and they've got kind of that trident. You know,
Yeah.
it looks like something from Aquaman. You know, holding up. Um, no, I try very hard not to get sucked into collecting a new area. I collect plenty of things,
Yes.
and frankly, I don't collect all of the modern Ukrainian stamps. Uh, I've just collected like about a half dozen of those because I think they're emblematic of who Ukraine is now and what their recent history is. And being able to see that all on something as small as a postage stamp, I think is remarkable.
Yeah. Thank you.
That would be the earlier Ukraine.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's about around World War One.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
And this would be the merchandise that they produce. I got hooked into it. Wait a minute.
It is
Wait a
so
minute.
easy to get sucked into that stuff.
I also collect the stamps. All of this.
That's wonderful.
They are amazing.
Yeah, now people that are interested in Ukrainian war stamps might want to check out. There's a wonderful European site called Ukraine War and Philately. So if you go to www.ukrainewarinphilately.eu, they list all of those stamps, and it's a tremendous site.
You can buy them directly from the Ukrainian post office. You can set up an account.
Yeah, and I've done that. I've done that.
And
the thing
And I
is
get the
that,
package from them
yeah,
once a month.
the thing is that they'll only have new issues. So, for example, they won't
Yeah,
have the
yeah,
ones with the Moskva
that's
on it.
that. Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
but yeah, if you want to do like new issue service or something like that, you can get it right from their postal administration.
And they'll always take donations at that website for their war effort.
Yeah. And what my friend and I are going to do is we're going to set up a website and create a conduit so that these warfighters can use the drone mail that they send and use that to use it as a fundraiser. Like a bake sale for the soldiers on the front line.
Please come back to us and let us know when you
Just
are
non.
ready to launch so that we can send mail.
Oh, there you go.
I
David,
remember
a couple
when
of years ago, I was doing a short presentation or exhibit for the DHSS on Pink Floyd. They had a color exhibition, and so I did it on Pink Floyd. And one of the things I ran across when I was doing that I didn't include in my exhibition was that Pink Floyd had written a song, "Hey Hey Rise Up," as a charity for support of Ukraine in its war. And I noticed there were several Ukrainian stamp dealers who had commemorated that on covers. Just an interesting thing. I decided not to put it in mine because they were, it wasn't really an official. It was more like a, fan-based, maybe even more profiteering on it. But it was just an interesting little piece of philately that they created these covers. They were all over eBay at the time. I don't know if you're aware of that.
That's neat.
I remember when the initial stamps after the beginning of the war came out, and they were trying to raise funds. I don't know whether it was a private entity, but I recall that we were being offered either the standard stamps or stamps on cover, or then stamps on cover for a few dollars more with a signature. And then another option, a fourth option, was stamps on cover with a signature and some kind of quote. And each one was philatelically a little more advanced, and they were able to raise more money through
Yeah.
the creative ways of marketing.
Yeah.
I have a couple questions. David,
Sure, Chris.
where's the Black Sea Fleet right now? Do you know?
Well, I don't. I will say that they're very sensitive at this point about future attacks with Ukraine, and they've had to pull back, which means that they're not able to support Russian troops as well as they'd like. I mean, their thought was initially that because Ukraine really doesn't have a navy, that the Russian navy would be able to operate with impunity. In the same way that when we have an air force, one of the first things that we do is we get air supremacy. Once you have that area, once that's established, then you can build on that and do other things. And initially, the Russians figured, well, we've got submarines and we've got corvettes and all these advanced kinds of surface ships, and the Ukrainians don't. But it turns out that's not necessarily they're not necessarily safe.
Okay, in your presentation, I noticed an insignia on several images, and I wasn't sure what it was, and I don't know how to describe it.
Can I go back?
Please.
David, while you're doing there, this is Rich Bajenski.
Yeah.
Answer to you, Chris, as far as the Soviet fleet.
Oh, that's
After,
odd one.
after they sunk the Moskva, they pulled most of their Russia pulled most of their boats to the east to Novorossiysk, which is mainland Russia, east of Crimea. They did occasionally pull a ship into the Sea of Azov, which is the body of water that separates Crimea from mainland Russia. But the submarine that was sunk was in port for service there in the Sea of Azov, and presume that they're not putting any ships active in that body of water anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can imagine if the Sea Baby was able to take out that sub, they probably have something else, and they probably have some different tricks that they can use. And the idea of having something that costs you a billion rubles that's sitting there, and you're just waiting for it to be a target. You don't want to do that. So I'm sorry, Chris. What am I looking for?
Would you go forward one slide, please? Yeah, you see that upper left corner?
Oh yeah, the trident.
The trident, yeah.
What's it
Yeah.
called?
So that's the symbol for Ukraine.
Oh, okay. And what does it represent exactly? Or is it just a symbol?
Can somebody help me out? Because I know that was used as an overprint on the 1918 issue.
Yeah, it's this again is Rich Bajeski. It's a heraldic sign
Uh-huh.
of the area of Ukraine that goes back to the time even before Russia took over Ukraine as part of the Soviet Union, and prior to that, it's a symbol of the history of the ancient government of Ukraine.
Mm.
And it did show up as an overprint during the Great Revolutionary War.
Mm. Thank you, Rich.
Yeah, appreciate
David,
that.
please come back.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Now, are people going to be joining us at the Boston Stamp Show?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I hope so. I'm going to be there for 2 weeks. So the week before, kind of setting up, and I'll be there the whole week. So I would love to meet anybody from Houston.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good job.
Okay.
Any other questions? Well, how about a nice hand for David?
Yeah.
So
Thank you,
much
David.
joining us tonight. It's
Really
a trip.
appreciate it. Yeah.
And his
Yeah.
folks,
And
his
mom and dad,
parents.
that's right.
to see mom and dad.
Yeah.
We
Glad
appreciate
they
you
are
taking the time.